The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Hello, friends, this is Sukhwant Singh. The lines that I quoted just now were penned down by a great man, Robert Frost, whose life was not an easy one, as it appears in his poems. He lived a life full of tragedies. I shall share this article with you. It writes, the man who wrote about peaceful snowy woods buried four of his children. Robert Frost is remembered as a poet America fell in love with, the grandfather of American verse, the voice of quiet reflection, the man who wrote about roads diverging in yellow woods. We imagine him as serene, wise, at peace with nature. But we were wrong. Frost didn't find peace in those woods. He was searching for it, desperately, through a life that tried to break him again and again. His father drank heavily and died when Robert Frost was just 11, leaving the family penniless. His mother turned into some kind of a holy group, and thereby the support that he could have got from his mother, he didn't get it. Robert grew up anxious, brilliant, and haunted, reading by candlelight, questioning everything, trusting nothing. By the time he was 20, he had already lost his first child, baby Elliot, to illness. It was the first of many heartbreaks. Frost tried to be anything but a poet. He worked on farms, taught school, edited newspapers, and failed at all of it. By 38 he was broke, defeated, and drowning in disappointment. In one final gamble, he sold the family farm and moved his wife Eleanor and their children to England. There, in a small rented cottage outside London, something inside him cracked open. He began to write, furiously, almost as if his life depended on it. The road not taken, mending wall. After apple picking, the poems, the poems that would make him immortal poured out of him, not from peace, but from pain. They sounded pastoral and gentle, but beneath the calm surface was razor wire, loneliness, regret, the weight of choice, and the quiet ache of survival. A poem begins in delight and ends in wisdom, Frost once said, but his began in grief and ended in endurance. The tragedies didn't stop. His daughter, Marjorie, died from complications after childbirth. His son, Carol, struggling with depression, took his own life. His daughter, Irma, succumbed to mental illness. His beloved wife, Eleanor, crushed by grief, grew distant and died too soon. Frost carried it all, every coffin lowered into the ground, every question that would never be answered, every moment spent wondering if he could have done something differently. And somehow he turned that unbearable weight into poetry. That's why his woods feel so real. They weren't a poetic backdrop, they were a refuge, a place to think when thinking hurt, a place to walk when standing still meant drowning. Frost didn't write about nature's beauty, he wrote about how to survive when beauty isn't enough to save you, how to keep walking, how to mend walls even when you don't believe in them, how to stop by snowy woods and choose, despite everything, to keep going. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. That wasn't poetry, that was survival. On January 20th, 1961, Robert Frost stood before the nation at John F. Kennedy's inauguration. He was 86, frail, nearly blind from the sun's glare. He had written a new poem for the occasion, Dedication, but when he tried to read it, the light was too bright, the paper trembled in his hands, and he couldn't see a word. For a moment it looked like failure, an old man faltering in front of the world. Then, without hesitation, Frost lifted his head and recited from memory the poem he knew best, The Gift, outright. His voice was clear and strong, defiant in the cold January air. In that moment, the poet who had spent his life walking through grief stood tall, not despite his scars, but because of them. Robert Frost was never the gentle grandfather of American poetry we imagine. He was a warrior who turned wounds into words. He didn't write to escape suffering, he wrote to walk straight through it and invited us to follow. His roads diverged not in peaceful forests, but in the valley of shadow of death. And still we kept walking, not because it was easy, but because stopping wasn't an option. That's the gift Robert Frost left us. Not the promise that life will be beautiful, but the proof that even when it's unbearable, we can still create something beautiful from it. We can still choose to keep walking, to keep writing, to keep living, no matter how heavy the snow, no matter how long the miles before we sleep. I think again and again, I keep sharing in my blogs that difficulties do come in our life. Without difficulties, I think only the people who have been cremated or they are lying in their tombs are at peace. If you are living, you have to face difficulties. So that's the kind of world that we are living in. So thank you for watching and listening.